The Walt Disney Company is looking for a new CEO, and Dana Walden had her big expose in CNBC talking about how she would be perfect for the job. Well, Josh D'Amaro is weighed in. Will Disney be Tomorrowland? Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is Mr. Vash Sky, a man who views every day as a great big beautiful tomorrow, shining at the end of every day. Is that true, Vash, or did I just make that up?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I guess, but this article, on the other hand, is suggesting that maybe it's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day right there. So definitely favorable for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about that. This article from Sarah Whitten is talking about how Disney made Star Wars the top film franchise of 2023 without a film theatrical release. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. That's a different article by this same contributor here. Let's switch to this article by Sarah Whitten from CNBC. Disney's parks are its top moneymaker, and it plans to spend $60 billion to keep it that way. Now, that is the title of this article, but maybe this is more about Josh D'Amaro himself. Let's go to the key points first. Disney Experiences division, which includes its theme parks, is the best performing part of Disney's business at the company. As the company tries to adapt to changes in movie and TV viewing habits. Josh D'Amaro, who leads the division, is overseeing additions and changes to parks as Disney pledges $60 billion in investments in the segment over the next decade. From innovations in robotics and animatronics to more immersive storytelling, Disney is looking for new ways to keep people coming to its parks. I got to say, maybe it's not the new ways that they need. Maybe it's some of the old ways. What's this little negative sign right here? What does that mean? Bash, right there. I don't understand. What is that? Anyways, let's move on. 3 years ago, Josh D'Amaro stood in a nearly empty Disneyland. California's theme park Main Street was quiet. No cheery tunes from famed barbershop quartet, the Dapper Dans. Love the Dapper Dans. No clanging railroad bell, and no wafting scent of waffle cones from the Gibson Girl ice cream parlor. Well, these are all old things at the park. I thought they were looking for new things. It had been more than a year since the COVID pandemic had forced Disney's domestic parks to shutter, but D'Amaro, chair of Disney's Experiences division, was confident guests would flood back in when the gates reopened. He was not wrong, I'll say that. His confidence was well-founded. D'Amaro's vision is now Disney's best performing segment, rebounding and offering stability in recent quarters as Disney shuffles to adapt its entertainment business to match consumer habits that changed after the pandemic. Did they really change, though? Did they? Interesting. That's fascinating. And if they did change, was it the parks division that needed to change? Vash, let me just... we're going to go away from the article here for a second. Why is the Disney Parks division earning so much better than the rest of the company right now?
Well, they have monetized it to the nth degree ever since the COVID-19 pandemic. You'll note that obviously they've changed their labor practices in association with their reservation system in order to keep those labor costs down, in order to keep operating costs down and profits up. They've changed the price elasticity of their business units in order to capitalize on higher incomes there. Also, too, they've implemented Genie Plus, which is a huge revenue driver for the entire division. But also, they talk about in earnings calls and so forth, providing a lot of operating income for the Walt Disney Company. So they have transformed the Parks and Resorts, or now the Experiences division, into something that is a revenue juggernaut, but not necessarily investing all that much back into the business up until now.
Right. And Genie Plus, I don't know if anyone who watches this channel is aware of this. I'm not a big fan of Genie Plus. I believe that it has created a situation in which lightning lanes are the actual lanes, and then you have the poor lane next to it, and that it has created a detrimental effect to the parks themselves. We'll be talking about in another video, maybe it'll come out before this because it's going to get ranty, about the rumored change to the DAS system at Disney Parks and Resorts. That has been precipitated by Genie Plus and Lightning Lane and all of that disaster for the company. They've essentially made a deal with Wall Street that they're going to keep Genie Plus, which is a detriment to the parks, but is also the only thing keeping the company afloat right now. By the way, that was a Bob Chapek era initiative. The experiences Disney posted. Sorry, let me clarify that before we go on. Bob Chapek was in charge of the entire company at that point. It was a
Yes.
Bob Chapek. That's what I mean by Bob Chapek era. So a lot has changed in 3 years. Tomorrow, sitting in a
Yes.
conference room in Burbank, an hour north of Disneyland, and just a few miles from the heart of Disney's theme park creative engine, Walt Disney Imagineering has much to brag about. So they did go on location for this interview. Interesting. The experiences division posted record revenue, $32.5 billion in fiscal 2023, a 16% increase from the prior year. Operating income jumped 23% to 8.95 billion. So I'm just doing a little quick math here. So 32.5 minus 8.95. That would mean 23.5 billion is how much it costs to run the parks division. So that $60 billion over 10 years, resulting in let's see, about 500 million per park. That's going to make a huge difference, as I'm seeing there. Right?
I mean, that's the thing, Jonas. One of the reasons why this segment has become such an earner is because they've cut so much from the daily operations of these theme parks. You know, like for the example, a lot of the entertainment offerings and experiences that were in the parks previously have been removed. A lot in Walt Disney World, but I can just tell you right now, the Hyperion, for example, on the West Coast doesn't have a show. We used to have a nighttime parade. Now we don't necessarily have that. Now we do have rumblings that we'll eventually get those things, but the parks necessarily haven't run like they had, decades prior, post COVID-19. That just necessarily hasn't happened, and that has obviously led to some dramatic revenue earnings and profitability for the company for sure. But at what cost is the question?
That's a very good point here. And now Damaro is saying described the pandemic as an opportunity to take a breath in time for his division to think about what we wanted the future to look like. And I just think about the state of the parks right now and maybe some recent incidents here, if I can wink at you there on what to bring up next, Vash. As difficult as that situation is, we saw it as a platform, a new vantage point for us to look at the operation, he said. While its parks were shuttered, Disney continued construction of its Avengers Campus-themed land in Disneyland and touched up old favorites such as the King Arthur Carousel. It built new rides and refurbished others in the years that followed. So are they saying they did a lot of maintenance here on the parks and made sure that everything was in tip-top shape? Toppling, maybe, perhaps?
That's the allegation right there, which, maybe necessarily. I mean, some experiences have been refurbished, but others have not. As you can see right here, this is via Disneyland News Today right here. Breaking speaker falls in guest pathway near Sleep Beauty Castle. This happened recently. I believe it was over the weekend here. And you can see right here the force at which this actually collapsed was
oh my!
I mean,
that's okay. First of all, if I was a person, I think my head would be bashed in.
Yes, and unfortunately, that has happened as well. When we covered that lamppost story, which was only 5 months ago, by the way, there was a person that was struck by these huge lighting rigs / speaker towers, and unfortunately,
right. So
led
that wasn't
to
just a standard lamppost, which would already be substantial at a place like Disneyland.
Right.
But this was a stage lighting rig for exterior lights that are meant to sustain the damage of the elements.
Right. And so somebody was actually carted away, went to the hospital over this incident right here. It doesn't look like that occurred right here, but we have seen numerous instances of decreasing park maintenance budgets. We've seen that the third shift, that shift that works in the overnight hours for these parks, they've been particularly scaled back in terms of the amount of workforce that they have to work with right here. We've seen entire teams shuttered as a result of attempting to just get every single dime out of these parks. Unfortunately, they're suffering from some real problems right now because of it.
And I don't want to give Josh Tomorrow a hard time right now, but if I was him and I was wanting to be taking responsibility for these parks, I would be doing the very thorough investigation instead of doing what Disney does and denying that there's a problem. And unfortunately for Disney, there are outlets like WDWNT that hold them to account on issues like this and refuse to not cover issues like this. I would say that they're going to go and check every single light pole at the park. And the classic Disney response would be to overcorrect and make sure that everything is right, and to maybe have an overreaction so that everyone goes, yes, yes, I understand, you're going to fix this, you are very sorry. But the Walt Disney Company never admits to actual mistakes. The World of Frozen, though, opened in Hong Kong Disneyland in November, and a Zootopia Land opened in Shanghai Disneyland in December. I can't help but notice those are not in America. The company also launched two new rides at Walt Disney World in Florida. Oh, okay, so something in Florida. Guardians of the Galaxy themed ride in its Epcot Park in 2022, and a Tron themed roller coaster in the Magic Kingdom in April of 2023. It took them 6 years to build that Tron roller coaster, and it was an exact duplicate of the ride that is at Shanghai Disneyland. Is that incorrect, Vash?
No, absolutely correct. There was a plan in order to make it larger for the American audience there, or to somehow transform it so that it was a much more, it was a little bit more of an elongated attraction. Unfortunately, it didn't go through with that. Guardians of the Galaxy was cut substantially. They were supposed to have Animatronics in the queues there, and unfortunately, that didn't result in that project going that way either. So it's, yeah, okay, we got new additions, but again, keeping those costs as contained as possible, it would seem.
I would agree. And we don't mean to go item by item here, but if someone is trying to list a bunch of accolades and what we call pixie dusting here on this channel and say, oh, look how great we are, I just want to make sure that everyone has the complete context on what's going on here. And if Disney wants to respond to it, they won't, because they would never admit that there's a problem. If they want to respond with data, please, and not just pixie dust. Additionally, the company has revamped attractions and theme park areas, turning the Pacific Wharf area of Disney's California Adventure into San Francisco Square based on the animated hit Big Hero 6. Any problems there, Vash?
Oh, yeah, that I wouldn't have brought that one up. I would have probably said Toontown. Or I would have brought that one up right there. Yeah, not good. Unfortunately, that overlay was, let's say, very fiscally conservative in its spend right there. We noted several times at the bridge, which I don't think has still been 100% redone, or I should say fixed. Opened in such, I mean, really, really shoddy work, and it was applying an overlay made up of sheet metal over an existing bridge, painted orange.
Sheet metal? I had thought it was plastic and was not correctly formed to the bridge. Now, the bridge itself looks like a real bridge that happens to be in a theme park. The Torii Gate of the San Francisco bridges there, they look like Six Flags to me. It looks like something that you caught Six Flags 5 years after its opening. It is not the quality that the Walt Disney Company has been known for in the past. And of course, Mickey's Toontown at Disneyland. Okay, guys, I don't want this to take forever, so I'm just going to tell you there's an entire video on this channel, and Vash has done an excellent job of covering this. Mickey's Toontown opened a year ago and was only completed a few weeks ago. If I'm not understating it, they opened it and then almost immediately closed certain areas. It has not been fully open until very, very recently here in 2024, and making major transformations at Epcot. Guys, it's a water walkthrough that is broken on many days, and also the lights at the I don't even know, was it the World Garden, the World Neighborhood Garden? What is this thing called?
Nature? Is it World Nature?
It's poor branding on their part that there are people who love Disney who don't know what this is supposed to be. I'm going to put the onus on Disney there on that one. They opened an area that had a bunch of lights that were in the pavement that were supposed to be really cool. If they functioned the way that they were supposed to function, it would be really great. But apparently, they forgot about all the power washing standards that they have had for this company ever since the company began. And that power washing busted each one of those lights over and over again. And so I don't know if the lights have all been replaced at this point, if they're all fixed, if they've decided not to power wash these areas, but that was a disaster. Also, a fountain in the center was replaced with a planter. And there's a very unusual show involving women and metal poles that is going into that area with heavy dance music that we're not going to get into here. I'm going to say all of that and say it is both not as bad as and worse than you would imagine, all at the same time. Those investments, coupled with new technology and mobile ordering and the ability for guests to pay to skip to the front of the line for certain rides, this is also another bad thing for the company. You can pay to skip to the line for certain rides, meaning that the app is My Disney Experience. Within My Disney Experience, you have Genie. Then you have Genie Plus, which is the paid service, which has Lightning Lane in it. So if you want Lightning Lane, you're already three nomenclatures in before you get to Lightning Lane. And then on top of it, there are certain rides that are excluded and have individual Lightning Lane. And you can pay for those individual rides. But they're saying have kept guests coming and boosted Disney's earnings at a time when the entertainment division is struggling to recapture its late 2010s boom. Sitting here now today, you've seen our results. Our results have been record-setting as recently as the last first quarter earnings. Maybe so. By the way, those earnings are higher, but earnings per share are lower. Record revenue, record margins, record operating income. So the record recovery has been swift. It's been strong. But more importantly, I think the future looks incredibly bright for our segment and the company, quite frankly. I'm really not sure about that. Vash, do you have any comment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at the spreadsheets, yeah, I mean, it looks great, looks awesome. It looks like we have upward trajectory as far as the eye can see right there. But when you look at the degradation of the experience, or the declining by degrees that has really affected guests' enjoyment at these parks, and necessarily might reflect poorly going forward on guest visitation or guest satisfaction, that really is troubling. That's kind of why we see, like, Magic Key, for example, it still hasn't sold out, folks. They have placards now at the front of the parks on the West Coast saying, hey, would you like to go ahead and upgrade your ticket to a Magic Key? I've not seen those placards in 20 years. So I mean, look, if we're firing on all cylinders,
who have already bought tickets to the park, they're saying that they will apply your current ticket towards Magic Key. That's something I would see all the time at Busch Gardens. Which, by the way, Busch Gardens is a better run park apparently. I say that and I'm like, is that really true? No, it sounds like it is true, because I think that Busch Gardens Tampa Bay works a lot harder to please their guests. In 2023, experiences was the best performing part of Disney's business. No question there, accounting for 36% of the company's total revenue, but 70% of its operating income. Meanwhile, Disney's entertainment division, which includes its theatrical and streaming business, has lost $11 billion so far. By the way, we're talking in the 14 to 15 as far as just spend on streaming. I think they've only made $3 billion total on Disney Plus this entire time, which outweighs that to get it to $11 billion in losses that they still have to recover from. Represented 45% of revenue, but just 11% of operating income. A disaster. Vash, add your context, please.
70% operating income. That's the profit, folks. That's what they're telling you right there. And they have spent all kinds of money. 2021 and I believe 2022, they spent $30 billion each year on what amounted to 11% of their profit, versus the parks almost got nothing. And yet it represented 70% of the overall profit for this company right here. That is massive. That is huge. Why are we underspending? We should be accelerating, which, they want to necessarily say that they are with the $60 billion investment. It should be higher than that, though, folks. This is where the profit is. This is where the money is. And for all those guys in CNBC and everybody saying that, we should separate the parks business or experience business off from Disney, you are out of your mind. There's no way. It is literally fueling everything that the company wants to do outside of experiences.
I completely agree with you. And there's actually a really good case for why the movie studio needs to function profitably and the parks business needs to function profitably, but not as separate division, not as separate companies, but as separate divisions within the same company. In fact, it might be better if they never talk to each other at all. But let's continue on here. The division's new strength is why Disney has pledged to invest 60 billion in experiences over the next 10 years. Debatable, a key part of its strategy to keep the parks fresh and relevant in a competitive segment. Why would they need to keep them fresh and competitive, Vash?
Because they've really kind of fallen back a little bit as their competition, namely Universal Studios in the form of Epic Universe, has they've hit that gas pedal to the floor and haven't let up. Here's the thing about the $60 billion investment: if they start now, we're not going to be seeing new attractions, folks, for at the very least 3 years, more like 4 years, most likely 5 years. That's how long we're behind the eight ball here. And here's the thing: Epic Universe opens in 2025, so it will dominate, mostly uncontested, those first few summers while Disney gets its act together here.
That's a fascinating point. Actually, there's a great statement in here. If you'll, they're intentionally not saying where any of that money is going because they're saying there might be a new Frozen, if you will, somewhere that the company will make. So they're not going to dedicate any of this $60 billion to a specific IP or a specific thing that they're going to be doing. They're essentially treating it as if it's a slush fund. This year, 70% of that money will go towards new experiences in domestic and international parks. Right now, it looks like mostly international parks, along with cruise lines. Cruise lines is one of the few profitable segments of the entire company. No question. There's no damage. I don't want to say there's no damage being done to cruise lines. We've heard from several people on cruises who have been on cruises recently that have said it's kind of going downhill. And the other 30% will go towards technology and infrastructure, including maintenance of existing attractions. So 30% towards maintenance. Does that sound like $60 billion of capital expenditures to you, or does that sound like just general upkeep
That
that
sounds
should
like
have been
general
done?
upkeep. It sounds like general upkeep to me that, like you said, should be done, should be performed. And look, there's a lot of maintenance to go around here, and these costs only accelerate as you have deferred it for all these years right here. So again, it's some of that Paul Pressler, Cynthia Harris logic creeping in a little bit. Previous post that era, it was all about preventative maintenance, and now it's like, well, let's go ahead and defer it to the next quarter, next quarter, next quarter, and now you have to spend even more than you necessarily needed to if you just maintain these on a proper cadence.
I agree with you, and I'm going to point out something amazing at the parks. But as you know, we're going to add context to it. Do you see these guys? These are BDX, or they're a form of BDX. Last year, guests caught a glimpse of one of these innovations, a trio of tottering bipedal robots from Star Wars called BDX droids, first spotted at California's Disneyland's California. Wow, first spotted at California Disneyland Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. My goodness, what a mouthful. They are just one iteration of a new technology Disney Imagineering is developing to bring walking robotic characters to life. I don't know exactly what they're intending here, what they could do with this technology more than just having a couple of bipedal robots walking around the parks. These are really cute and they're great, but also these kind of interactions don't really scale. They're at the maximum level that you would have from also having, I don't know, Luke Skywalker walking through the park or the Mandalorian walking through the park. These are really cool. These are really neat. They were probably intended for the Galactic Star Cruiser, but I don't know any more innovation other than saying, "Hey, look at that thing. That's neat." Vash, am I just completely off base? Is that just too cynical?
No, well, I don't necessarily disagree with you, and I believe these are being provided by a third party company, if I'm not mistaken, right there. I look, I am glad, I am super glad that they have introduced droids to what was previously kind of a dead land. And honestly, this is the kind of stuff that they had necessarily advertised or want, were suggesting that they were going to do upon Galaxy's Edge's opening, and then all these things this big old $1 billion land opens, and these aren't found. It's like, why aren't they? And that goes into just a myriad of discussion between, like, okay, well, there were entertainment groups that were supposed to be there, there were shows that were supposed to be there that didn't necessarily take place. They implemented a whole Dolby Atmos system, folks, this whole matrix subsystem of sound and audio to bring some of these experiences to life, and they necessarily haven't done that. I know people are, they're like looking at the Fire of the Rising Moons there, or the fireworks presentation that takes place over Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. It's like, oh, this is great. It's like, yeah, but that should have been there on day one. Why did it take them 5 years to implement these things? Again, is this reflective of the staying ahead of the curve, as this article points out here?
I'll point that out. By the way, that Fire of the Rising Moons, or whatever it is, that looks really cool. From the little bit of footage that I've seen, it looks amazing, and it seems that they're kind of reversing course from the no original trilogy stuff that they have been doing in the past.
That's
I
very
think
true.
I think it's great, and it actually calls back to the original films, which is something that they're not doing enough of here. As was pointed out here, guests who visit Galaxy's Edge in the next 3 months may stumble across this trio. They're talking about the droids as part of Disney's Season of the Force. They add to the regular roaming characters meet and greets with the likes of Rey, Chewbacca, Kylo Ren, and stormtroopers. Only one of these characters appeared in the original trilogy, which is the successful film franchise. Force Awakens, yes, highest grossing domestic of all time, but you can see as the dwindling and the dwindling and the dwindling of the box office continued, that maybe these films were not the thing that Disney needed to build their entire theme park land on. Maybe if you buy Star Wars, maybe you should do a Star Wars.
You would think so, and you can see with the inclusion of more current characters, the reaction from them, or even some classic characters like Boba Fett, for example, the Mandalorian and Grogu when he makes appearances, the reception that they receive as opposed to Kylo Ren and Rey is just mind blowing. Also, too, with these droids right here, it there's a certain level of enthusiasm that just was non-existent before the implementation of these things, and it's like, come on, do more of that. I remember on Sweethearts Night at Disneyland, that I believe Princess Leia, or was it Princess Night? It was Princess Night at Disneyland that had Princess Leia there in the A New Hope gown right there. The lines were out the door right here. It's like, why aren't you putting these into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge on a regular basis?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people. First of all, the excitement of the joke of, well, that Princess Leia is now technically a Disney princess, and why they didn't parlay that into something at the parks immediately, I will never know. The parks actually did a better job of incorporating original and prequel trilogy content before they owned Lucasfilm, which it boggles my mind. Like, if you're going to buy something, why would you say that you're not going to make it what it is? As Pro often likes to bring up, like, if Disney bought Batman, they would say, we're not going to do Batman, we're going to do Batman's daughter. And Batman will never appear, and if he does, he's going to be old and fat and on horrible and on an island, and he's going to be ashamed of what he was. No, that's not what you want to do. No offense to Mark Hamill, he actually got in great shape to play Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi. I'm just saying that the intention here was to say that he's an old hermit.
Out of everything mentioned in these paragraphs that we've they have mentioned, we've only seen one thing in the actual parks themselves, and that's the Spider-Man Stuntronic right there. We've not seen Judy Hopps make appearances in any of these parks right here, nor have we seen, like, remember the walking Grogu? I'm sorry, not Grogu, but Groot, little animatronic. We haven't seen any place where that's been presented right there. Project EXO, I remember that whole thing. What happened to that? Where is Hulk? I don't know. These pet projects are nice, they're cute, they're fun, but implementing them in the actual parks on a regular basis, the WDI has had some struggles there for sure.
Yeah, if the intention here is to help people create compilation videos of things that have not appeared in the park for a very long time, then Disney is doing a great job on that. I'm reminded of the guys that are at Pandora that have the fake legs sticking out in front of them. They're kind of on stilts. But let's talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure here and the things that they're trying to do to brag about that right now. It shows in Disney's rebrand of Splash Mountain. In both the California and Florida parks, the company is refurbishing the ride into Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which will feature dozens. Okay, so they're saying dozens of animatronic characters from The Princess and the Frog. That's the most we have ever heard for this ride, by the way. The Imagineers have developed all electronic audio animatronics for the ride for characters such as Louis. That Louis animatronic looks amazing. Trumpet playing alligator from the film. Disney revolutionized animatronics decades ago with its hydraulic or liquid fueled and pneumatic or air fueled systems. But the electronic animatronics for Tiana's Bayou Adventure allow for a more refined and precise movement, making them appear more realistic. I would debate on the actual outcome on everyone but Mama Odie. Similar animatronics can be seen in the rides of Smuggler's Run and Rise of the Resistance in Galaxy's Edge. I have a hard stance against human-sized animatronics here. Vash, I know you might differ from me on that. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll just say that like we said, in that previous video right there, the Mama Odie looks awesome. She looks great. But when they're trying to necessarily translate to Tiana, it doesn't necessarily come out right. Like I said, in that previous video, Charlotte looks a little bit creepy. She doesn't move her mouth, by the way. Also, too, the dozens of animatronic, nomenclature that they're using here, or not every single animatronic is going to get the full range of motion. Eurodora barely moves. It looks like the beaver that they show in this highlight video barely moves.
Yeah, there's a snake that's just popping up and down. He might be
right.
pneumatic. I actually don't care what the technology in the animatronic is. Disney does, and the fact that this very awkwardly worded thing right here. Here's an indication of how they're trying to do a little pixie dust here. Interior pieces of some of the animatronics were crafted using 3D printing, resulting in a lighter weight material. I don't, 3D printing might result in a lighter weight material, but this sounds to me like they're trying to say, we're using this new technology, therefore it's going to be better. I don't necessarily see the connection there.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, this is us innovating. It's like 3D printing has been around for quite a while there. You have to lighten the weight, though, because these actuators that they're actually using are, as Culture Casino actually revealed on a live stream I did with him recently, they might be undersized. So
that's a very good point. Now, let's talk about the Galactic Star Cruiser, which Josh D'Amaro is apparently holding as a plus for his tenure here. He cited the recently shuttered Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser, a hotel and immersive experience that took guests on a 2-day voyage in space. It was a 48-hour interactive story that allowed fans to physically play in the Star Wars universe. One aspect of the Star Wars universe that was not the one that was popular for, the 40 years that Star Wars has been around. This is something that had never been done before, D'Amaro said. It was difficult to even explain to the public, and I think it was incredibly brave for us to move into this space. And this, to me, says Imagineering is still at its best today. Before we dissect that, let's get a couple more in. High ticket prices deterred the average park goer, and the Galactic Star Cruiser shuttered in September. Still, D'Amaro said the experiment was a learning opportunity for the company. Those learnings are being employed on the next experiences, which we haven't even announced yet. So, Vash, let's just focus here for just a moment on the Star Cruiser. 48-hour experience. $5,000 to $6,000 a night for 4 people. More, obviously, it was done like a cruise, and they priced this as if it was a cruise. What are people expecting when they do a cruise?
To actually go somewhere. the cruise, the $6,000 cruise to nowhere, probably wasn't the best marketing strategy for this whole thing.
Well, there was a trip to Batuu. There was a trip to Walt Disney World in there, which is something that obviously you could not get for $200 a person if you just didn't go to the Star Cruiser, right?
No, you got basically the same experience that everybody else did at Batuu, but now with some more scavenge hunting that necessarily you didn't want to do when you were actually paying full freight for Batuu there. So this was this was challenging. And look, listen, the company had spent hundreds of millions of dollars on research and development for this thing, because the idea was they were going to bring this out to every single resort across the world. So imagine 6 of these actually operating, and they, originally they were going to go with 800 with a full build out of 1,200 rooms at one point. Then they scaled it back, and they couldn't even fill 100. I mean, that's how much they botched this thing right here, and it really is unfortunate, because there is potential, but with those last minute budget cuts on this whole thing, theming it to the sequel trilogy again, as if we didn't necessarily learn our mistake the first time with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and incorporating it into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge as much as they did right there for that high price tag, but without delivering on that quality aspect of it. This thing was doomed from the start, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would point to the early advertising for the Star Cruiser, which featured a Disney Channel star, so already not someone connected to the Star Wars mythos, and yes, with a big shocked look on his face. So we have the old and the new Disney interacting together, because you have someone who is Disney Channel, so you've got the Disney people, nothing against the actor, doing exactly what he's supposed to do, but he's reacting to a Star Wars version of a pop star. And I got to say, of all the music in Star Wars, it's mostly been performed in CD bars. And in this case, it's supposed to be, what would a pop star look like if they were in the Star Wars galaxy? And I don't think that's a question that has ever been asked by a Star Wars fan. So right off the bat, easy miss. And then the next version was someone from Lucasfilm explaining how they worked hand in hand with the Disney Walt Disney Imagineering people in order to create this experience. And in the end, I think that, the people who are willing to pay that much for a Star Wars experience are not people who are that interested in Rey and Kylo Ren and whatever they had going here. As I understand it, the people who were the crew of the Star Cruiser, they were the best of the best at Disney, and that they did a fantastic job. The actual cast members on the Star Cruiser, fantastic. But I think Disney just missed the boat so many times here. Again, with that dedication to synergy as opposed to actual profitability. But with that being said, let's continue back to this article. We're doing the whole thing here, guys. I guess. Now,
that's no problem right there, for sure. I mean, there's a lot in this, as it attempts to necessarily bolster Diamaro's case that he's doing a very, very good job, but just right underneath the surface, not so much.
Yeah, well, they're talking about the cruise lines, which they're doing their first ship in like 10 years, and that they have their first ever Disney water ride attraction on board. That's the Aqua Mouse. Okay, it's fine. It's not fantastic. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's also not something that you would necessarily want to brag about. Here's one that's fascinating to me. So he says, "This is something I think about that's really important. The idea of the Disney difference," Damaro said, "that this company works together as one is more powerful now than I think it has ever been, whether it's entertainment co-chair Alan Bergman in the studios creating a new property that we can then take to Disney experiences and bring it to life and extend that story into in brand new ways, or franchises that are birthed out of the theme parks." There is so much to pick apart in just this one paragraph. Yes. First of all, the company works together as one in more powerful. That this company works together as one is more powerful now than I think it has ever been. I think that the synergy of the company right now is actually its detriment. That is something that is the problem. The movie studios are subject to the parks. The parks are subject to the movie studios.
Right.
Anything that is put in this area, you have too much of people able to blame other people. The film divisions need to be profitable on their own. They can't just be relied upon. You can't just spend $500 million making a Star Wars movie in the hopes that it's going to be the most successful thing of all time. That would be, of course, I'm referring to the Rise of Skywalker. And you can't just pour something into a Disney park hoping that it props up the movies. You have to make financial decisions that are good for each one of these things on their own. And the synergy is good if it happens, and you need to take advantage of it wherever you can. But no, I don't think that's the case. Now, here's the thing that I really want to point out. On the idea that Dana Walden just had a big piece come out in CNBC from Alex Sherman talking about how she could be the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company. In this article, which appears to be Josh D'Amaro's response in him wanting to be the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company, here you have whether it's entertainment co-chair Alan Bergman in the studios creating a new property. I noticed Dana Walton's name is not mentioned in this article.
That's a fair point. That's a good point right there. That Josh D'Amaro, that's a direct quote, and he did not mention Dana at all.
So I think that's a glaring omission right there. And of course, franchises that are birthed out of the theme parks. Vash, I don't even have to prompt you. What is the problem with this statement right here?
It only works one way usually.
Yeah, they've essentially said that there are no new IPs coming to the theme parks unless they're already movies.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And honestly, when you look at the newest slate of things that might be coming to the parks, think about how old some of those franchises are. We're hearing about Coco being introduced at Disney's Animal Kingdom. That's a kind of an older property right there. Encanto, about 3 years old. By the time it opens, it'll be 6 to 7 years old. Indiana Jones, well, it came out in the 1980s. Tiana, right? 2009 is when that film came out. So again, it's this synergistic flywheel works great when it works, but man, when entertainment is not necessarily putting out anything that the parks necessarily want to take up, it's a trickle.
Yep. And I really think this speaks to the mistake of saying that we're not going to do any more new IPs in the park, that they have to be something that already exists. I get the business philosophy, but I think this is a problem. If you don't have a Walt Disney Imagineering that can come up with ideas like this, and I think that's really the problem of the whole company, by the way, the fact that they can't build any new IPs, that actually speaks to a lack, that's something that is lacking in Imagineering that used to be there. But
I can tell you right now, Bob Iger himself has put the mandate out that only things considered for the parks, because these investments are so expensive now, they must be franchises first and foremost.
Yep. And here we go. Disney's Blue Sky Disney Experiences division has immediate expansion plans, even before the bulk of the $60 billion investment kicks in. Next to open for Disney is Fantasy Springs. Hey, Vash, who owns the park that's getting Fantasy Springs?
Well, that would be the Tokyo Disney Resort, and I think that's the Oriental Land Company. Is that correct?
Yeah, so not owned by Disney, so we can skip that.
That's right.
Concept and design work is underway for the Tropical Americas area at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida. There have been no official updates on the previously announced third ride at Avengers Campus in the California Adventure area at Disneyland. Okay, this is actually the first sign. This article that is definitely citing Josh D'Amaro pointing out this. That's actually the clearest sign that it's still happening. They didn't mention it once on the earnings call, despite that being mentioned at the last Destination D. Company is developing what it's dubbed Blue Sky ideas for its parks, projects that are still in early development and may ultimately not see the light of day. That's really not a good idea. They have to stop doing that. Disney has teased an area based on Coco or Encanto, or both could be underway in the Magic Kingdom. This is confusing considering the Tropical Americas announcement that they've made. There were also talks about opening an area of the Magic Kingdom that would be overrun by Disney villains. This is not... Why are they allowing this to be put in this article? During the company's investor meeting this week, Iger even teased the possibility of an Avatar land at Disneyland in California. Okay, now, Vash, go ahead.
Tease the possibility of an Avatar land. The article doesn't even commit to it. That's kind of funny right there. Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard anything from this third Marvel attraction, which for Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure, which a lot of people have been noting recently. It's like, ooh, that's the one thing we haven't necessarily gotten a lot of updates on. Maybe Disneyland Forge involved with that. I'm not sure, but it's weird how they've been so silent, as opposed to like this Coco and Encanto tropical themed area in Disney's Animal Kingdom. They've been pretty forthright on information with that. Surprisingly enough, yeah, Villains Land. I mean, what we're hearing, folks, and we'll talk about it on if this is after the fact of this live stream right here that we have coming up here on Monday night. We'll be talking about more about this, but it is not beyond Big Thunder. It is around Big Thunder. There might be some real implications for that park for sure.
Yes, and we might see some huge geographic changes there, and maybe the haunted mansion will no longer have a water view there. But let's continue on here. We have thousands of acres land still to develop. Iger said during the Morgan Stanley conference in March, we could actually build 7 new lands. This to me is pixie dust here. I don't think
Yep.
they're building 7 new lands. I don't think that they're doing anything other. They will be expanding Disneyland if they get their way, which is good. Confirmation here that each Galaxy's Edge cost $1 billion each. That's where the $60 billion investment comes in, and this is what blows my mind here. I referenced this before. We actually have a fairly good idea in the near term of what's being built, but we're purposefully not going to allocate it all, Iger said at a media event on Tuesday, according to the Los Angeles Times, because who knows, in 5 years, we can end up with a giant hit movie. Think Frozen, that we may want to mine essentially as an attraction or a hotel or restaurant in our parks. So you want to maintain some flexibility. So he's saying it's a good thing that they have no idea how they're going to spend this $60 billion, which sounds more like $30 billion over the next 10 years.
They have said multiple times, oh, we're going to turbocharge. Then you look into the quote and they say, well, the latter half of that 10-year plan. Okay. They're not spending all the money all at once because they necessarily don't have that much money to spend, but which is mind boggling because they allocated the same amount over 2 years for the studio division, but we'll go ahead and piecemeal this out over 10 years for the parks division. The one division, by the way, accounting for 70% of the profit, as we mentioned up top right there. It is crazy how much Iger is parks averse. It's insane.
But of course, this is where it all needs to go, and this is where we're going to end our reading of this article. But Iger won't be head of the company in 5 years if all goes according to the plan. The CEO, who returned to the post in 2022, is set to step down at the end of 2026. Disney's board is in the process of succession planning. Tomorrow is on that short list.
Oh boy.
Oh, here we go. That's the entire point of this article when it comes down to it. It is someone who is pro tomorrow reaching out and saying, hey, you need to do this article on tomorrow. At this point, I fully expect that we will be getting articles about Jimmy Pitaro and about Alan Bergman about how they need to be the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And I'm sure Kevin Mayer is already working on his. You know what's really going to be great if Tom Staggs finally gets in gear and does his PR campaign to be the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company. Between the two of them, I think Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs together would be the best idea for CEOs and something else of the Walt Disney Company. But that's my own personal opinion here. We have talked for a very long time here, Vash, and I appreciate your indulgence on this very long video. But I thought this article deserved examination. Do you have anything that you want to add here?
Look, I'll just say this about the succession planning and all this kind of stuff. Look, the $60 billion idea that they have is nice, but here's the thing. Like the article points out, the next CEO could come in and say, you know what, we're not necessarily going to allocate all that capital towards the parks division because I want to do something for studio or I want to do something for streaming. So it's all up in the air right now, and you know the article. Obviously it's a little bit of a puff piece for Josh D'Amaro himself, but it is critical that they get this CEO succession thing right. And do we necessarily want another parks guy, especially one that honestly, quite frankly, hasn't run that division all that well right here? I do agree with you. I think outside candidates need to be considered. Tom Staggs and Kevin Mayer are the best choice, but they're over there at Candle Media, so we'll have to see how this whole thing plays out.
I agree. I fully agree with you. And of course, we want to throw this to our audience here. Do you have any comments at this point? The two of us have talked for a very long time. I'm sure we've said something you disagree with. I think there might have been a figure or two there that I got off there. And if you want to correct that, I think I said 500 million when I should have said 600 million one time. Be sure to give me a hard time about that in the comments. Of course, like this video if you like this video. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.